Welcome, everybody. It is my very great pleasure to see all of you here for the 14th annual conference of the International Light Association. So, what is this International Association? There's a good number of you who are new, who come for the first time to our conference. So I thought, for this, these opening remarks, I'll take a bit of time to introduce a bit our association, and also the context in which it's operating, the whole world of light therapy. So we've had many conferences. The association was created in 2003. Here you can see just a few of our latest events, and as you can see, we're mostly doing them in Europe. It's the first time we come to the US. And hopefully not the last. So, we call this conference, the theme is the power of light. And it's talking about using light for health. Now, anybody who's curious about light and healing realizes that we're in the middle of a real revolution in light medicine. There has never been so much research going on, so much activity in using light for healing. And there's a whole branch of medicine, light medicine, that's taking shape as we speak, since around the year 2000. So there's plenty of scientific conferences about light medicines. There's thousands of professionals involved, scientists, doctors, and so on. So what is special about our particular conference, the International Association Conference? What is specific about us is that we are interested into all aspects of light healing. And this is not necessarily the case for many of these scientific conferences on light medicine. We are extremely interested in the scientific aspect of light medicine, but we're also interested in other aspects which are not necessarily well accepted or covered in the scientific world. And there are reasons for that, which you will very well understand through this conference. So the main modality in which light is applied in light medicine is through the biochemical pathway. Light acts on our cells, on our brains. And there is a whole world that has to be explored about this interaction. This is really the field of light medicine, the scientific field. And in parallel with this, there are other modalities of using light and colors. Modalities which have more to do with energy medicine, or with working with the mind, working with consciousness. And these aspects are not so well understood by science. They're very hard to study scientifically. And so there is a whole parallel world of using light and colors that falls within those categories. Now, it's interesting to look at the historical concept of using light for healing, to understand more where we are today. Of course, light has always been used for healing by all ancient civilizations. As far back as we can see, we see examples of using light and colors. The earliest records we have come from Egypt. The great sage Imhotep writes about his use of color, light, for different methods of healing. In India, there was a whole tradition of Ayurveda medicine, and light was considered as important as food and medical remedies as a way of healing. In ancient Greece, they were very fond of using sunlight for health, what's called heliotherapy. And the early Greek doctors were very much aware of the importance of light for our health and well-being. The Romans even had in their legal code a right to light. People were legally entitled to have access to sunlight, healthy light. As we get closer to us, around the year 2000, techniques became more sophisticated. ways became available to produce more pure colors, better filters. This was perfected by the Arabs around that time, and the great Avicenna, one of the greatest doctors of the medieval world, used colors and light extensively. He would shine colors through colored glass on his patients. And this use of colored glass, of course, migrated to Europe, and the great cathedrals had these incredible colored glass, stained glass windows, and they were also used for healing. They would bring people with mental problems to get healed under their colored rays. So there's a very, very ancient tradition, right, of using light and colors. As we get even closer to us, of course, the Western medicine and Western science started to get developed. And from the 19th century, some researchers started to look at light in a more scientific way. And one of the first pioneers in this field was Dr. Babbitt here in the US. He published a book which is still a reference in many ways, more historical reference than an actual scientific reference. And people building on his work, such as Dinsha Gadiali, also in the US here, developed very sophisticated systems of healing with colors. You have here his device from 1925, the spectrochrome. He would put colored gels and filters and illuminate people with specific colors. He had a whole technique of healing many kinds of different ailments. Another pioneer from the US as well is Dr. Spittler, who created what's called syntonic phototherapy. And he was one of the first to explore the use of shining light in people's eye, using the visual system as a source of inputting colors. And he was one of the first also to recognize the effects of colors on the autonomic nervous system. His whole syntonic principle was based on this understanding. And his work survives. There are some of the founders of this association come from the technique of syntonic phototherapy. You'll be able to hear some of them during the weekend. And also, in the same period, early 20th century, light was used by doctors such as Dr. Rollier in Switzerland to heal tuberculosis. There was no cure at that time for tuberculosis, and they were using ultraviolet light. So Dr. Rollier at clinics high in the Alps to capture the ultraviolet light, and you can see children and people getting healed under sunlight. And it's fascinating to see how much we've evolved since then, because now we're so afraid of sunlight, we cover ourselves with creams to block it out. And you can see that in those days, they were actually using this light for healing. So there is a whole world to be understood in how to use properly this light. And light was so much respected in those days that one of the very first Nobel Prizes was awarded to a doctor working with light, Dr. Finsen, in 1903, and also for his work on using colors to heal various forms of tuberculosis. So light was really one of the top medical approach in those days. But this did not last. Something happened around that time that changed the whole picture. And it's what our friend Dr. Brian Breeling, who we have with us today, actually is a great historian of light medicine, likes to call the dark age of light therapy. And it started around the time where antibiotics were discovered, where the whole biochemical approach to health started to expand. Incredible discoveries were made, and light became not so useful then because it was more slow, it was not so reliable. And there was a pressure from the whole medical lobby and industry to push away all alternative forms of medicine. So not only light medicine, this applied to many types of alternative medicine. And so starting from the 1940s, all these pioneers, which we just mentioned, were highly persecuted. For example, Dinsha was actually thrown in jail by the FDA. His whole work was destroyed, his lab was confiscated. We're lucky that few copies of his work remain. They escaped people saved a few copies. Spiegler also, his work was prohibited. This syntonic phototherapists couldn't carry the instruments across state lines because of FDA regulations, and so on. So there was an example showing how this, the point where it reached. You see here the very influential Journal of American Medical Association. In 1927, they were the highly respected light. You can see the kind of ad that appeared in there, and look at what they're saying in 2000. The whole idea of using light for healing, it's actually considered as a quackery for much of the 20th century. So this is the scene where we were not long ago, just less than 20 years ago. Working with light was very dangerous and not at all respected. So what happened in between to change the situation? And what happened actually are two key scientific discoveries which made light respectable again. And very briefly, the first of these discoveries was understanding how light affects cell metabolism through the process that's called photobiomodulation. And this was discovered in large part by one researcher, Professor Tina Karu from Russia. You can see right here, we invited her at a number of ILA conferences. And she was the one in the 1990s who went through extensive research and finally understood the exact mechanism through which light, especially infrared light or deep red light, enhances cell metabolism. And through her scientific work, it became clearly established that this was a real effect. It was not quackery at all. So she contributed a lot, and now thousands of researchers are pursuing this field. And you, of course, know many applications of this way of using light. It's also called low-level laser therapy or cold laser therapy. There are many, many different applications. And here we have people and exhibitors working with these wonderful techniques. And then the second discovery that changed the whole picture was the discovery of what is called the non-visual optic pathway. And this is a pathway within the brain that links the retina directly to the hypothalamus, the core of the brain that regulates our hormonal balance. And this pathway is separate from the well-known optic nerve, which of course brings light to the visual processing centers at the back of the brain. So there is this parallel network of fibers that directly link the retina to the hypothalamus that's controlling our whole inner clock, our chronobiology. And this has very profound implications. And led, of course, to therapies such as bright light therapy against seasonal affective disorder and so on. It's one of the best, most famous applications of light therapy. So again, thousands of researchers exploring this field now. So because of these two major discoveries, suddenly people understood that light is a very powerful healing methodology. And so these fields are now well recognized scientifically. But what happened to all these techniques that the ancients were using? Many of them are not covered by these techniques because they deal more with, as I mentioned, energetic aspects, such as acupuncture, such as energy fields, or they work with consciousness. So this is the going from light medicine to energy medicine, really. And there are not that many conferences that are dealing with this extremely interesting aspect of light healing. So the ILA really embraces all these different forms, so you will hear speakers covering all of these aspects during the conference. For example, one of them is Dr. Shikora, who we will hear this morning, applying light to acupuncture points. And another well-known example is color puncture from Peter Mandel. And there are many, many different techniques of this order, whole healing systems, which are practiced and have very powerful results. So this is a field of known as chromotherapy, or using color for therapy. as I just mentioned, these aspects are not yet well understood scientifically. Things are progressing, it's evolving, but because they deal with things that are very hard to measure, they still remain parallel in many ways. And they're related to really the viewpoint. It's more a holistic viewpoint than a materialistic biochemical viewpoint. So it's all part of a paradigm shift that has to happen in medicine, and that will be happening in the course of this century, as many of you know very well. You're part of it. All right, so that gave you just a very quick overall view to let you better understand where we are today, what this conference is about. And I just want, before we move on, to let you know that next year, this conference will be back in Europe. It will be in Norway, Oslo. So this is a little preview of next year's event.